Life is not a random series of events, nor a collection of isolated moments strung together by chance. It is a story, a symphony, composed by hands far greater than our own. And yet, how often do we struggle to trust the music when we cannot hear the melody? How often do we stand in the silence, in the tension between notes, and wonder if the song has ended? We live in a world that teaches us to measure our lives by what we can see, by what is immediate and tangible. We crave certainty, clear direction, and immediate results. But God does not operate on our schedules. He does not confine himself to our understanding of time or order. His ways are higher, his timing perfect, even when we cannot make sense of it. Consider the night sky, vast, endless, filled with stars that seem scattered without pattern. But what appears random to the untrained eye is in fact the universe held together by divine precision. The earth spins at exactly the right speed. The sun rises and sets with unwavering faithfulness. We trust that the dawn will come, that the seasons will turn, yet we struggle to believe that our own lives are held in the same hands that set the cosmos in motion. Perhaps you've been in a season where the path ahead is unclear. Perhaps you prayed for an answer, a sign, some indication that God is still working, still leading, still present. And yet, all you hear is silence. It is in these moments that fear creeps in, whispering that you are forgotten, that your life is off course. But my friend, silence is not absence. It is not abandonment. It is the space between notes in a masterpiece still unfolding. The great composers knew that music was not just in the sound, but in the silence between the notes. The pauses, the rests, the moments of quiet, they do not break the music, they give it meaning. And so it is with God's plan for your life. There are moments of movement and moments of stillness, but all of it is working together in harmony. The times when you cannot see, when you cannot hear, are not wasted. They are part of the design. Think of Joseph, a young man given a dream of greatness, only to be betrayed, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. Years passed, and surely there were nights when he wondered if the dream had been a mistake, if God had forgotten him. But through every setback, every delay, every painful turn, God was writing a story far bigger than Joseph could have imagined. What seemed like a detour was direction. What felt like silence was preparation. And when the time was right, Joseph was raised up, not just for his own sake, but to save a nation. Your life is no different. The struggles you face, the uncertainties that weigh on your heart, they are not signs that you are lost. They are movements in a greater symphony, one that is not yet complete. You may not understand every note, every pause, every shift in tempo, but the composer does. When fear tells you that everything is uncertain, that your life is spiraling out of control, remember this. The same God who holds the stars in place, who orchestrates the rising and setting of the sun, who guided Joseph from the pit to the palace, is the same God writing your story. And he is never off key. Fear is a powerful thing. It has a way of creeping into our hearts, whispering doubts in the quiet moments of our lives. It tells us that we are not enough, that we are alone, that the road ahead is too uncertain. It convinces us that if we cannot see the future, we should be afraid of it. But fear is a liar. It has no substance, no power of its own, only the influence we allow it to have. Have you ever noticed how shadows stretch long in the evening? The sun is still there, still shining, but the angle of the light makes the shadows seem bigger than they really are. Fear works the same way. It takes a small worry, a passing doubt, and stretches it until it looks overwhelming. But the truth is, fear is not a reality. It is merely the absence of trust. It is what happens when we take our eyes off the one who holds all things together and fix them on the uncertainties of life. So many of us live bound by fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. But let me ask you something. Has fear ever changed an outcome? Has it ever given you peace? Has it ever led you to joy? No, fear only paralyzes, only distorts. It keeps us stuck in places we were never meant to stay. It blinds us to the truth that God's plan is not dictated by our anxieties. Think of the Israelites standing at the edge of the Red Sea, their enemy closing in behind them. They saw only two options, destruction or captivity. Fear told them they were trapped, that they had no way forward. But God had another plan, one they could not yet see. With a power beyond human understanding, he parted the waters and made a way where there was none. What looked like an ending was only the beginning of their journey to the promised land. How many times in our lives do we stand at the water's edge, convinced that there is no way through? How often do we allow fear to convince us that because we cannot see the path, there must not be one? But God does not ask us to see the way. He asks us to trust that he has already made one. Peter learned this on the stormy sea. The waves crashed around him, the wind howled, but when Jesus called him out of the boat, he walked on water. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, the storm had no power over him. But the moment he let fear take hold, the moment he focused on the wind instead of the one who commanded it, he began to sink. The storm did not change, only Peter's perspective did. That is the lesson for us. Fear will always be present in this world. The storms will come, the shadows will fall, and there will be moments when we do not understand what God is doing. But fear does not change God's plan. It does not undo his promises. It does not shake the foundation of what he has already set in motion. You may feel overwhelmed. You may be facing something that seems impossible. But hear this: the God who calls you is faithful. He has not brought you this far to abandon you. Fear may try to tell you otherwise, but it is only a shadow stretching long in the fading light. The sun has not gone away. The light is still shining. And God's plan for you is still moving forward, whether you can see it or not. How many times have you stood at a crossroads in life, looking for direction, only to find the road ahead blocked? How many times have you prayed for an open door only to hear it shut with no explanation? It is in these moments that doubt creeps in, whispering that maybe God is silent, maybe he isn't listening, maybe you've lost your way. But what if the closed door wasn't rejection? What if the delay wasn't punishment? What if what looks like an obstacle to you is in fact a divine redirection? We have all been in places where we thought we knew the way forward, where we planned and dreamed and set our hearts on a path, only to watch it fall apart. And in that moment, it is easy to feel like everything is unraveling. But hear me, nothing is unraveling. God is not in the business of undoing. He is in the business of refining, of shaping, of leading us to something greater than we could have imagined. Look at the life of Joseph. He was given a dream of leadership, of purpose, of influence. But the journey to that dream did not unfold the way he expected. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison. At any point along the way, he could have thought, this isn't what God promised me. I must have misunderstood. I must be on the wrong path. But he wasn't. He was exactly where he needed to be, because every setback was setting him up for something greater. Every detour was leading him to his destiny. Joseph did not sit in that prison cell forgotten. He did not wait in suffering for nothing. God was working in the silence. He was preparing Joseph, molding him into the man who would one day stand before Pharaoh, who would one day save a nation from famine. If Joseph had not walked through the valley, he would not have been ready for the mountaintop. And what about Moses? He grew up in Pharaoh's palace, raised with power and privilege. But his journey did not keep him in that place. He was driven into the wilderness, into exile, spending 40 years as a shepherd. To the outside world, it looked like his story was over. He had been a prince, but now he was a nobody, wandering the desert. But God was not finished. The wilderness was not wasted time. It was training ground, because when God called Moses from the burning bush, he wasn't calling a prince to lead his people. He was calling a man who had been humbled. who had learned patience, who had walked the wilderness and would now lead others through it. How many of us have been in our own wilderness, wondering why God has taken us the long way around, wondering why we face delay after delay, setback after setback? But hear this, delay is not denial. A detour is not a dead end. The job you didn't get, the opportunity that slipped through your fingers, the plans that didn't work out, these are not signs that God has abandoned you. They are signs that He is guiding you. We see only a thread at a time, but God sees the whole tapestry. We see only the road ahead, but God sees the destination. And if He is closing a door, it is because there is something better ahead. If He is making you wait, it is because the right time has not yet come. You may not understand the road you are on. You may be questioning why things have turned out the way they have. But know this, God does not waste a single step. The delay you are facing is not a detour from your destiny. It is the path to it. We have all been in seasons where God seems silent. We pray, but the heavens feel like brass. We seek answers, but none come. We cry out in desperation, but the only response is stillness. And in that silence, doubt begins to creep in. Has God forgotten me? Has He turned His face away? Is He even listening? But what if silence is not the absence of God? What if it is His presence in a different form? What if in the very stillness we fear, God is doing His greatest work? A seed buried in the ground does not break through the surface immediately. It is hidden, unseen, resting beneath the soil. And to the untrained eye, it may look like nothing is happening, but deep within, life is stirring. Roots are stretching downward. Strength is being built in the unseen places. And in time, when the season is right, that seed will break through, revealing what was growing all along. So it is with our lives. There are seasons when God's hand is clear, when His voice is near, when doors are opening and prayers are answered. But there are also seasons when we are called to wait, to trust, to sit in the unknown, and those seasons are not wasted. They are the very seasons in which our faith is strengthened, in which we learn to trust beyond what we can see. Look at the life of Jesus. For 30 years, He lived in obscurity. 30 years before the first miracle. 30 years before the first sermon. 30 years before the world would know His name. And yet, in that time of seeming silence, God was not absent. He was preparing, shaping, refining. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he ever stood before Pharaoh. David was anointed as king, but years passed before he took the throne. Paul spent time in solitude before his great ministry began. Silence is not a sign that God has left you. It is often the very place He is preparing you for what is to come. But we are impatient. We want results now, answers now, movement now, and when we don't see it, we assume that nothing is happening. But faith is not about seeing. Faith is trusting that even when nothing appears to be changing, God is still working. Think of the disciples after the crucifixion. Jesus had been laid in a tomb, and all their hopes seemed buried with Him. Saturday must have felt like an eternity, a long empty silence where God seemed distant. But what they could not see was that Sunday was already on its way. Resurrection was coming. The silence of Saturday did not mean that God had stopped working. It meant that something greater was unfolding. And maybe that is where you are right now. Maybe you are living in a season of silence, where your prayers seem unanswered and your path uncertain. Maybe you are wondering if God is still there, still listening, still leading. But let me tell you, just because you cannot see the answer does not mean it is not coming. Just because you cannot hear God's voice does not mean He is not speaking. Sometimes He is moving in ways too deep for us to understand. Sometimes the silence is not punishment, but preparation. Do not mistake God's quiet for His absence. Do not let the stillness convince you that He is not working. The seed is still growing, the dawn is still breaking, and the God who began a good work in you is still faithful to complete it. You are not here by accident. You are not a mistake. Long before you took your first breath, long before the world ever knew your name, God knew you. He saw you. He formed you with purpose, with intention, with a role to play in His divine story. And yet, how often do we forget this? How often do we look at our lives and wonder if we matter, if our struggles have meaning, if our journey is leading anywhere at all? The world tells us that we are just one among many, that our existence is fleeting, that we must carve out our own meaning before time runs out. But that is not what God says. Scripture tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that before we were even born, God had written out our days. He is not making up your story as He goes. He is not reacting to your circumstances, trying to piece together a plan. No, He has already woven every moment, every joy, every sorrow into something beautiful, something eternal. Think about that for a moment. Think about the sheer magnitude of it. The same God who set the galaxies spinning, who tells the ocean where to stop, who calls each star by name, He knows you, He cares about you. And He has placed you here in this time, in this season, for a reason. And yet, so many of us struggle to believe this. We look at our failures, our weaknesses, our limitations, and we assume we are unworthy, that surely God must have a better candidate for His plans. But if you look at the Bible, you will see that God has never chosen people based on their qualifications. He has always chosen people based on His purpose. Moses stuttered. David was just a shepherd boy. Gideon was impulsive. Paul persecuted Christians. And yet these are the people God used to change the world. Not because they were strong, but because they were willing. Not because they had all the answers, but because they trusted the one who did. God is not waiting for you to be perfect before He can use you. He is not looking for someone else to do what only you were created to do. Your story, every part of it, even the parts you wish were different, has shaped you for a purpose that only you can fulfill. Think about a great painting. Up close, all you might see are random brushstrokes, some dark, some light, some that seem out of place. But step back and suddenly it all comes together. The dark strokes give depth, the light brings contrast. What once seemed like a mess is revealed as a masterpiece. Your life is that painting. The moments that made no sense, the struggles that seemed pointless, the pain that felt unbearable, God is using all of it, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the broken. He is weaving it together into something greater than you can see right now. And here's the incredible part. Your life is not just about you. Your story is not just for your own sake. God is working through you to touch others, to bring light into the lives of those around you. Every act of kindness, every moment of faith, every time you choose to trust Him even when it's hard, you are part of something bigger than yourself. So do not believe the lie that you do not matter. Do not let fear tell you that your role is insignificant. The Creator of the universe has called you by name. He has placed you here for a reason, and no force on earth can take that away. There comes a moment in every journey when we must decide whether we will trust what we see or trust the one who sees all. There comes a time when faith must step beyond the realm of comfort, beyond the need for certainty, and take hold of something greater. Because the truth is, God's plan for your life is not dependent on your understanding. It is dependent on His sovereignty. And yet we hesitate. We wrestle with doubt, with fear, with the uncertainty of what lies ahead. We ask, what if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice? What if I am not enough? But do you know what is at the heart of every what if? A lack of trust. We do not question God's power. We question whether He will truly be faithful to us. But He is faithful. He has always been faithful. Not once has He made a promise that He did not keep. Not once has He called someone forward only to abandon them. Abraham was called to a land he had never seen, given a promise that seemed impossible. He did not have the details. He did not have the full picture, but he stepped out in faith, and through him God built a nation. Peter saw the storm, felt the wind against his face, and in a single moment of trust, he walked on water. The impossible became possible, not because Peter was strong, but because his faith was in the one who is. The Israelites stood at the walls of Jericho, and God told them to march, not to fight, not to attack, just to walk in obedience. And as they walked, as they trusted, the walls fell. Again and again throughout Scripture and throughout history, we see the same truth repeated. God does not ask us to understand the plan. He asks us to trust the planner. And that is where so many of us struggle. We want to see the whole map before we take the first step. We want to be certain of the outcome before we move forward, but faith does not work that way. Faith is trusting even when we do not see. It is believing even when the answer has not yet come. It is stepping out even when we are afraid. God never promised that the road would be easy. He never said there would be no storms, no trials, no moments of doubt, but he did promise this: I will be with you. And that promise is enough. Look back on your own life. How many times has God brought you through something you thought you would never survive? How many times has he provided in ways you did not expect? How many times has he turned what looked like a setback into a setup for something greater? If he was faithful then, why would he not be faithful now? If he has never failed you before, why would he fail you now? Some of you are standing on the edge of something right now. Maybe God has placed a calling on your heart, but fear is holding you back. Maybe he has been nudging you to trust him in a deeper way, but doubt is keeping you stuck. Maybe you know that he is leading you forward, but you are afraid to take that first step. Do not let fear keep you from what God has prepared for you. Do not let doubt rob you of the joy that comes from trusting him fully. You may not know what tomorrow holds, but you know the one who holds tomorrow. And when you place your faith in him, when you step forward in trust, you will see what has been true all along. His plan is bigger than your fears. There will come a day when we will look back on our lives and see the full picture, a day when the questions that once haunted us will be answered, when the moments that once felt unbearable will make sense, when every twist and turn in our journey will reveal itself as part of a divine masterpiece. But until that day comes, we are called to walk by faith, to trust that even when we cannot see the way, God is still leading us forward. There is a great deception that whispers to us in our hardest moments. It tells us that our struggles are meaningless, that our pain is wasted, that our failures have disqualified us from God's plan. It tells us that we have wandered too far, that we have lost too much time, that we are no longer of use to the kingdom. But listen to me. There is no failure so great that God cannot redeem it. There is no detour so long that he cannot bring you back. There is no moment so dark that he cannot shine his light upon it. The enemy would love for you to believe that your story is over. He would love for you to sit down in your sorrow, to build a home in your regret, to believe that what was lost can never be restored. But God is not finished with you. He is the God who restores what was broken, who redeems what was stolen, who brings beauty out of ashes. And if you are still breathing, he is still working. Think of the thief on the cross, a man who had wasted his life, who had made mistakes he could never undo, who in his final moments had nothing left to offer, and yet, as he hung there, he turned his eyes to Jesus and said, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And with one sentence, Jesus wiped away a lifetime of sin and gave him the promise of paradise. One moment of surrender changed everything. And so it is with us. It is never too late. It is never too late to turn back, never too late to believe again, never too late to trust that God is still writing your story. Some of you have been holding on to the weight of your past for too long. You have been living under the burden of shame, carrying the regret of choices you wish you could change. But let me tell you something. God does not see you through the lens of your failures. He sees you through the lens of His grace. And His grace is greater than every mistake, greater than every wrong turn, greater than every fear that has ever held you back. You may not understand everything that has happened in your life. You may have walked through valleys so dark that you wondered if you would ever see the light again. But hear me, God wastes nothing. Not one tear, not one moment of pain, not one prayer uttered in desperation. He is weaving all of it into something far greater than you can imagine. And one day when you stand before Him, when you see the full picture, you will know that every moment was worth it, that every struggle had a purpose, that even in the times you felt forgotten, you were being held. So do not give up. Do not let fear tell you that your best days are behind you. Do not let regret convince you that you are too broken to be used. God's plan has not been derailed. His promises have not changed. His love for you has never wavered. Keep walking, keep believing, keep trusting, because the God who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it.